And we're going live now. I just want to let everybody know we are recording this. Welcome to AISD and Austin Council of PTA collaboration, Make It Matter Monday. We are talking about AISD legislative priorities with Edna Butts. Edna, I'm going to let you tell them a little bit about yourself, your title, what you do, and then tell us what you're up to.
Okay, well, my title's really long, Director of Intergovernmental Relations and Policy Oversight. So in addition to government relations, I write policies for the district, and I'm also the elections administrator and other duties as assigned. I've been with the district a little over 8 years now. Before that, I worked for Kirk Watson for 5.5 years. And before that, I worked for the Attorney General's office for 13 years the first time and 6 years the second time. So I'm really old. Anyway, so I'm very happy to get started on the presentation, and there's the people who were on this call thus far are very savvy. So I may kind of go through these slides fairly quickly. Oh, Arthi just texted and said she's dealing with a refrigerator crisis. So are we ready to get started?
Yes, we are. And we also have folks joining us on Facebook Live. So we'll get more people on this call as well, but don't be shy about the fact that some of these people may be brand new to this as well.
And also, I wanted to let y'all know that if you have questions as I'm going through this presentation, I'd love to just answer them as they come up. So feel free to ask questions. And if you see something, Laurie or Daphne, in the chat or Facebook Live comments, bring them to my attention because I may not be reading them myself. So, all right. Let's see.
With that said, I'll absolutely just go ahead and say that someone did refer to you as a badass, which I will completely.
Okay.
We're going to start the tone off with that because I think that is totally exemplifies what you do. So you're awesome. All right, Edna, sorry about that.
Okay,
but yes, we will.
Okay. I'm trying to share my PowerPoint. It didn't work.
No, it's working.
It's working?
Yeah,
oh.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Well, I kind of lost y'all, but
yeah.
Here we go. Okay, so I think most people know that it starts the second Tuesday of January every odd numbered year, and this year it ends on May 31st. No change in lieutenant governor or governor. We will have a new speaker. The presumptive speaker is Dade Phelan, from a Republican from Orange in East Texas. And our legislative delegation in Travis County remains the same, with the exception of Sarah Eckhart, replacing Senator Watson. As you all know, we have a big budget crisis. The comptroller in July estimated that we would have a $4.6 billion deficit by the end of the current 2-year budget cycle. But then on November 30th, he reported to the Legislative Budget Board that the financial forecast is not quite as dire as he reported in July, but he doesn't have a new number. He will be required to give a new number the day before the session starts. And I also want to point out, which is important, that our rainy day fund, which is the Economic Stabilization Fund, has $8.79 billion in it. So the budget is going to be the main focus this session, and the legislature is not required to pass anything except a budget. Redistricting is another big issue this session. However, because the census has been delayed, they will probably have a special session on redistricting. The redistricting committee will probably start hearings during the regular session, but they will not conclude the redistricting process during the regular session. And the other big question is how the legislature will do business during this COVID crisis. And there's some information that came out on Friday that I'll go over with you in a minute. So on November 16th, our board approved its legislative priorities. And we did it a little bit differently this time in that the board decided to focus on 5 overarching priorities, which are listed here. The first being supporting sustainable funding for House Bill 3, opposing diversion of public tax dollars, and that includes things like vouchers and that sort of thing, opposing unfunded and mandates, supporting statewide approach to broadband access, and supporting addressing the elimination of disproportionate impact of suspensions and expulsions on Black and Hispanic students in particular. So normally we have a lot of priorities, and the reason for that is I learned during my first session working for Austin ISD that if someone from the legislature asked me what's the district's position on X, if the board had not passed a priority on X, I couldn't say what our position was because we didn't have an official one. So since then, we've had fairly detailed priorities so that if I know that the board and the district has a position on something, I want to make sure that the board has officially adopted that position. So you will see on our board priorities that the board also approved what we're calling an appendix, and it has 28 more specific priorities that were adopted in the 5 major areas. And they're divided into sort of 5 major subject areas: accountability and assessment, charter schools, education funding, local control and flexibility. And the one on transportation is basically to allow our school buses to use toll roads without having to pay a toll. So there's that one. So the main one is regarding sustainable funding for House Bill 3. And it's important to note what HB 3 did for our district and for other districts. In AISD, we granted $48 million in raises to teachers. So most of you may recall that the legislature required that raises be given up to a certain percentage, and that teachers, counselors, librarians, and nurses with more than 5 years of experience receive a higher raise than other employees. So in AISD, well, first of all, we contract with Seton for our nurses, so we don't employ them directly. But we gave our teachers, counselors, and librarians with 5 or more years of experience a 7% raise, and other employees received a 6% raise. In addition, we gave a stipend of $500 more to special ed teachers and $1,000 to bilingual teachers. And in addition, the state importantly increased its share of education funding, which had been 38%, to 45%. And it also increased the basic allotment from $5,140 to $6,160. And some people have been surprised to learn that the education code provision for the basic allotment was at $4,000 some dollars. And in the past years, the legislature had appropriated more money than the education code required in the appropriations bill. And so in the appropriations bill, the basic allotment had been $5,140. And importantly, the $6,160 now in HB 3 for the basic allotment is in the statute. So that's good news for school districts. So, and it did a whole lot of other things. It has funding for dyslexia. It increased special ed allotment, increased the comp ed allotment. So HB3 did a lot of really, really good things. And I think all school districts are aligned in wanting to maintain HB3 funding. And a lot of legislators, Democrats and Republicans, have said that's a big priority for the legislature. So because of COVID, most school districts want the legislature to base funding on enrollment rather than attendance. As most of you know, we get funding based on whether a child is in their seat at a certain time during the day. And we have kids who are learning remotely, and it's going to be less of a burden on the school district and on teachers who are currently taking attendance in different methods for kids who are learning virtually, either synchronously or asynchronously. So we want them to base funding on enrollment rather than attendance. Let's see here. We also oppose cuts to the foundation school funding program, and we also support funding to promote appropriate services to students with special needs. Austin ISD spends twice as much on special ed services than we receive from the state. Recapture and fund balance. Recapture was reduced somewhat under HB3, primarily because the state has increased its share of education funding. We support, one of the things we learned in 2009 and 2011 is that back then the feds had the supported states with, I forget what it's called, ARA funding. But what the state did was it supplanted what the state normally would have given to school districts with the federal funds. And you'll recall that then in 2011, they cut $5 billion in education funding. So we are urging that any funding that we get from the federal government be given to districts without the state reducing the amount that the state would otherwise owe districts. And the other thing that several legislators have made reference to is the district's fund balance. So we're required by board policy to maintain a balance of at least 20%. And some legislators view our fund balance as the rainy day fund or a savings account, but we don't use it that way. Sometimes we don't get state funding until January, but we have to start paying our teachers in August. So we need it in order to operate. And we'll be developing a one-pager and other educational tools to explain how Austin ISD uses its fund balance, why it's important to maintain it at the level that it is. So on the specific, the 28 priorities that are under the appendix, some of them that are under accountability and assessment are that we support issuing report-only accountability ratings in August of 2021, which would not be used to rate districts or campuses, you know, A through F. So you probably have heard that some legislators have urged that the test not be issued at all. Our position is not necessarily that, but that we basically use them for diagnostic purposes.
Edna, can I ask a question here?
Uh-huh.
My understanding is that people are, and when I say people, I mean districts, state, representatives are hesitant to ask for an elimination of the STAR, even though, you know, teachers are asking for it, because they don't feel like there's going to be a federal waiver available for standardized testing this year. It's hard to tell based on the new administration exactly where they will fall on that, but they have certainly people on the education task force who I believe would allow waivers for states who didn't want to do, you know, I'm going to say foist standardized testing on their districts. And so I'm wondering if this is a reaction to that. I mean, I keep hearing it. They're not going to allow waivers, don't ask for it. And so I'm wondering if that's why we came to this position, or if there is, or if we really, somehow the district thinks that there's some value in giving the STAR.
You know, this particular priority was written back probably in about April. I worked with our accountability and assessment team on this one. And I think at that time, we didn't know how long COVID was going to last. And I don't think that we would be, we certainly wouldn't oppose not having to take the STAR test. And in fact, Representative Gina Hinojosa, I think it was Representative Hinojosa, who said the other day, we had a briefing with our legislators last week, that really STAR doesn't measure, she doesn't want our teachers to have to focus on preparing kids for STAR, even if it's going to be report only, because there's too much catching up to do. So I don't think we would object to not having to take the STAR exam, but this was, as I say, this was written at the time that we really didn't know how long COVID was going to last. So,
yeah, this is Marianne. Hi, long time. Hope you're well. I'm glad to see you. Hi.
Good to see you.
So,
M.
Yeah, yeah, I'm driving right now actually, but I was wanting to listen in. So yeah, we're working pretty closely with Dr. Walter Stroop. He is a professor at UT. Spent a large part of his career studying assessments and what is appropriate in terms of metrics for students. His research, and this is academic research, he's testified, you know, multiple times in front of the state legislature, telling them these things, that this test, once a student is on a trajectory of a line, you know, you're a good test taker or you're not a good test taker, and the STAR measures nothing other than that. It doesn't measure what they're taught, how they're taught, the quality of the teacher. It is linked to socioeconomics. It is linked to, is English your first language, which to me, I can't believe it's still legal. So you have kind of a basis. You're kind of forming this, like your foundation for A through F ratings, your foundation for, in terms of enrollment, because, you know, ratings are directly linked to what families and socioeconomics of families are going to be there, is a biased and a false metric to start with. And I know maybe the district, for maybe federal reasons, I don't know what, you know, the position because of COVID, but personally, I want to give a lot of energy to this session, just to, even if it's like, you know, educating legislators, educating families that we're using the wrong measuring stick. It's kind of like trying to, someone's going to be a certain height in life, right? You're going to be 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to grade them on that? You know, and that's kind of what we're doing right now. And so that, it's just a sensitive point for a lot of us, because we kind of talk amongst ourselves in our own little echo chamber and get riled up and upset about it. So that's kind of your audience right now. We're like highly sensitive to the STAR in general, like not being a good metric or a fair metric. Like good's a very, you know, just not the best term, but it's not a fair and accurate assessment of what's being taught. So yeah, there's just a lot of education and work that I think needs to be done, and I don't know why people push for it. You know, I don't understand all the reasons why we have to do it.
Yeah, and I think, Daphne, you brought up a good point, that if we don't get a waiver from the federal government, then this is this is our, I guess, our go-to. That is, if we don't get a waiver and we have to take them, at least don't use the exams to punish a district or a campus based on that rating. So yeah, you make a very good point there. The third bullet here is regarding Rosedale. So we in the Jeannie Nahosa, I guess it was last session, maybe, and possibly the session before, I don't remember, they all kind of run together. Rosedale doesn't have any special exemption for ratings, and sometimes we've had to appeal the rating if Rosedale got an F. And so we very carefully constructed a bill that would exempt a school like Rosedale from the accountability ratings. So we're going to try that again. Local control and flexibility. We want to be able to spend unspent bond funds to purchase technology, supplies, etc. in the event of an emergency like we had with COVID. And actually tomorrow, the second bullet is oppose measures to limit school districts' ability to have representation before the legislature, state agencies, etc. There's a hearing tomorrow. The Senate State Affairs Committee is going to have a hearing, invited testimony only, about using what they call taxpayer funds to lobby. This has been a bill that has been filed the last couple of sessions. And so there's 1,200 school districts in the state of Texas, and some of them are very, very small. They're in very remote locations of the state, and they depend on, as we do too, on TASB and Texas Association of School Administrators and Texas School Coalition, which is the association that represents the recapture districts. We depend on those associations to track legislation for us and to share the legislative priorities with legislators. And so there's been an effort to curtail that ability for school districts. Interestingly, the past legislation that's been filed does not exempt charter schools from lobbying, even though they receive state funds. There have been bills in the past also that that impose lengthy language in bond propositions. School districts are able to have bond elections in May or November. They're trying to restrict them to November only. So it's fairly clear to me anyway that some legislators just don't want bonds to pass. And then the other is eroding the flexibility of school districts who have a district of innovation to set their own start time and end dates. And in fact, there's already been a bill filed this session that would not allow districts of innovation to start any earlier or end any later than the districts that are not districts of innovation.
Hey, Edna, can I interrupt you a second and ask? We've got a couple of questions coming through, and I want to get to them before we move off the topics. We were talking about the STAR. There's a question here. Is AISD having seniors who haven't finished their EOCs come back in person to take them in December? Do you know about that, Edna?
Well, yes. There was just an email about that this morning. Because I think there was a Channel 36 news story about it. Hold on a second. So yes, we do, students who are set to graduate do have to take the STAR exam, or students who are testing includes juniors and seniors who had not passed in 2019, those graduating in December who have not yet taken the STAR, or those who are completing these courses this semester. That's a response that our chief of government relations responded to Representative Hinojosa, who asked that question this morning.
There is a follow-up to that question. Is there a reason why AISD has pushed for the test not to remove the high stakes from 5th and 8th graders, but not high school graduates?
Well, what I was talking about in this presentation is our position for the 87th legislature. So, you know, I'm going to have to get back to y'all on this particular, and I'll send it to ACPTA. But this is new news to me about the seniors and juniors having to take the STAR exam in order to graduate. Now, you know, we have the individual graduation committees. That's still in place. So if a student does not pass if a student does not pass 2 or fewer EOCs, that student can request, well, not can request, actually, I think it's automatic, that an individual graduation committee will review that student's portfolio and determine whether or not that student can graduate. And we've graduated several, you know, at least a couple of hundred or more students since that IGC law passed a few sessions ago.
Yeah, that was
so let me get back to you on this issue that just came up this morning about the seniors and juniors, and I'll follow up with an email to you that you can share with ACPTA.
Fair enough. And I just have one more question. This is from Charlotte Branch. Is the base funding on enrollment, are you fighting for that for this year only or for every year moving forward? I just want to, we're like one of 4 states, right, that continues to do enrollment this way. It is an archaic kind of backwards way of.
It's for not just for this next biennium. It's for forever.
Yeah. Okay.
Forever until something changes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thank you very much. And that's it for now. We'll let you keep moving along.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, charter schools. Increased transparency, notice, and opportunity to provide input. So I know, because I have worked on these before, when an entity is seeking a charter, or when a current charter is seeking to expand and open new campuses, they're required by law to send a statement of impact to school districts that may be impacted by their charter school. And sometimes they will only say, we're gonna locate in North Austin. They don't tell you a zip code or zip codes. They don't give you more complete information. And so it's difficult to really give an accurate assessment of what the impact is going to be to a particular campus or to the school district. So we are asking that more accurate notice and more specific locations be provided when they provide this notification to school districts. The other thing is that charter schools are funded at about approximately $1,200 more per student than traditional school districts are. And so there is a fiscal impact on the state when they either allow a charter to expand or they grant a new charter. And so, especially now, because of the current budget situation, we believe that the legislature should know and take into account, that the commissioner should take into account what the fiscal impact is going to be to the state of Texas and to local school districts before a charter is approved or expanded. Level the playing field by basing charter funding on the average allotment received by school districts. So for example, all right, let me back up a little. The reason that charters get additional funding per student is because their funding is based on the average of the small district and mid-sized district allotment. So small school districts and mid-sized districts get more money because we base funding on student attendance. These small and mid-sized districts don't get that much funding because they have fewer students. However, they have the administrative costs of operating, a district and campuses, and they have the, the building costs and the utility costs and so forth. So because charters get funded based on the small and mid-sized district allotment, they get more money, but they may not be located in a small district or a mid-sized district. They may be totally located in Houston or in Austin, yet they receive more money than the Austin ISD or Round Rock ISD or Manor AISD. And the other thing is that charters should accept all students, including students with disciplinary issues. They're allowed by law to exclude students with disciplinary issues, which means basically a lot of the students who have disciplinary issues are students with special needs. So they're basically allowed to do this. And there's a charter that was just approved in Austin recently that purports to serve students who are dropouts or students who are at risk of dropping out. And when I looked deeply into their application, I saw that they are not going to enroll students with disciplinary issues. And that's just absurd, in my opinion.
Can I ask you a question quickly, Edna?
Sure.
So Kim asks, do all charters get the same amount per student currently?
I don't think exactly the same, Daphne, but I think that most of them do get somewhere between $1,100 and $1,200 per student more than a traditional school district. Then I'm not 100% sure on my answer on that. That's why I'm
sure. We'll give you a little wiggle room in there. It is something like that. I think you're right.
And then here's the last thing is that require that before the commissioner grants an expansion to an existing charter, that the commissioner should at a minimum look to see whether the charter has achieved the representations and goals included in the initial charter application. So you'll see charter applications that say, we're going to serve dropouts. We're going to serve kids at risk of dropping out. And this is the percentage of kids that we're going to enroll in that category. They'll say we're going to enroll X percent of special needs students. We're going to enroll X percent of low SES, of X percent of at risk. And so in their application, they say all these things they're going to do. And then they may not do them, but yet they want to expand. And so this particular priority is aimed at requiring the commissioner to see, okay, you granted their application based on these representations they made. Before you let them expand, did they actually meet those representations? Did they achieve those representations?
Can I add to that, Edna? The entire point, for those of you who don't know, and I know a lot of you do, but the entire reason why charters exist is because they promise to bring innovative programming to education and show us how to do it right. And then that programming, whatever this innovation that these charters were supposed to bring, was supposed to come back to the public schools. And this whole system has been subverted for reasons that I don't completely understand, but I think everybody needs to be aware. These are the details of how we're trying to manage this charter school system in our state. But it is actually pretty devastating. It's a devastating system. We've allowed it to continue for a really long time. And we parents need to stand up and hold our state responsible for bringing charters in not holding them accountable the same way we hold our public schools accountable. And our public schools don't get to send people home that they don't like or don't fit in. So it is a really egregious system, and it's wonderful that we keep addressing it. But parents need to understand our money is being taken from us, the money that belongs to our children in our public schools, under a false pretense. The charter school system is a false pretense, and our representatives have allowed it in this warped fashion to continue to siphon off students and money out of our public education system. Sorry, I will get off my
No. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. And I'm really, really thankful that our board has prioritized this as well. Okay, so our priorities are on our website. If you go to our website, you click on the first button, which is our district. You go to Board of Trustees. And then underneath that, there's legislative issues affecting AISD. And what I'm going to be doing after, when I get an opportunity to read the bills very carefully, I've already started a list. I'm probably tracking about 90, 95 bills. And I'm creating a table that shows our priorities, and then bills that have been filed that that support that priority, or that that relate to that priority. And the support the priority means that they're on point, that they squarely support the priority that the board has passed. Relate to means that the caption of the bill is broad enough that if it were amended, it could support our priority. So it's sort of our way of flagging those that could be amended to support our priority. But I want to be absolutely sure, because I haven't had the opportunity or the time to actually dig into reading the bills in great detail. I don't want to post a bill that I think supports our priority, but then deep down in the details, there may be something that is amiss. And so I want to be sure before I post these publicly that they actually do support our priority. So be looking for those. And here's the other big issue is, how will the Capitol work this session? So as I said, we had a briefing with our delegation last week, and then I checked in with Representative Donna Howard and her chief of staff on Friday, and then on Friday the quorum report and the Texas Tribune posted some other details about this. So there will be temperature checks, and we here at AISD, we have before we can go into any district building or campus, we have an app, and we have to answer all these questions before we're allowed in the building. So they will have that as well. Probably only people who work at the Capitol will be admitted, and people who don't work at the Capitol will have to have an appointment. We don't know how testimony is going to work. You know, in the past, you could sign up right before the hearing or during the hearing if they hadn't heard the bill that you want to testify on. So far, with some of the committees that have had hearings during the interim, it's been invited testimony only. And here's the other, this bullet about registering support or opposition to bills. This is very important, and that's one of the reasons that that our board has passed those very detailed priorities, those 28 detailed priorities, is that when I was on staff for Senator Watson, you know, we're dealing with thousands of bills. And if a bill comes up and it's going to be voted on, and I'm not familiar with the bill because it didn't go to a committee that I staff, I always look at the committee report or the House research organization report, and I see who testified in favor, who testified against. And if I see all of these school districts and parent organizations and PTAs registered in opposition to the bill, I want to know why. What are the issues that they see that made them oppose the bill? Or if I see that they supported the bill, then I feel very comfortable recommending to my boss that he support the bill. So that's why registering support or opposition, even if you do not testify, is important, because I guarantee you that's what staff looks at. So it's broad coordination, bipartisan efforts are going to be essential. And this is because of the makeup of the House and the Senate. The House has 83 Republicans and 67 Democrats. We have all of our 6 House members are Democrats, but there are only 6 out of 150 members. And that's why I've always said that we have to, including ACPTA, has to reach beyond just Austin. We have to coordinate with PTAs in other districts that have Republican members, because that's the only way that we're going to either pass a bill or defeat a bill. In the Senate, there's 19 Republicans and 12 Democrats. 2 of our 3 senators are Democrats and 1 is a Republican. And again, that's 3 out of 31.
Hey, Edna, can I interject here again? We do actually have legislative priorities, and the one that stands out to me is the broadband accessibility. There are issues that are, there are many issues that are not Republican Democratic issues. They really do affect everybody across the aisles. And one of those issues is the broadband accessibility. We would like to think that some of the equity issues were more ubiquitous in our state, but we're getting there. But those are our opportunities to join with rural districts and form a coalition that we can then use as leverage for other issues that are important to us as well. So keep that in mind. Some of these priorities, it is important for Austin, but it is more dire in our rural communities that the broadband accessibility they were promised back 20, 30 years ago has never come to fruition, and we can join in their chant for broadband accessibility, and they will have more success than we will.
Yes, absolutely. You're right on point. I mean, broadband for that's a perfect example of a broad coalition. Rural, they've had this issue for years, and we haven't realized we have this issue until COVID. So that's a perfect example of that. Another great example is HB3. I've seen Republican legislators come out and say, no, absolutely, that's one of our biggest priorities is maintaining funding for HB3. And there are going to be a lot of other issues as well.
Can I ask one question, Edna? I'm sorry. How do we go about getting hold of the charter applications for schools near us? Is that a TEA thing?
Yes. Well, what I can do, so when we get our statement of impact, whenever we are sent the statement of impact by the charter school, which they're required to do under law, basically, I have been getting them lately. They're sent to our superintendent, and the superintendent disperses it. So I'll get them, and I'll be happy to pass them along to you.
Are those public, Edna? Is that public?
Are they public? Oh yeah, it's public.
So we could post it on our ACPTA advocacy group every time?
Yes, actually, I think that you all did
recently
reach out on a charter expansion for BASIS that was going to be located in, is it Maplewood or?
Emily, Emily, were you part of that?
No, I can't remember specifically. Sorry.
That's okay, but you're right, Edna. We did.
Yeah, but you did, and here's the thing. I've been told and I forget who told me this, but that the commissioner so the commissioner has two roles with regard to charter school. One is to approve an initial charter, and the other is to approve an expansion of an existing charter. And he is, he likes charters, and that he doesn't respond well, according to someone within TEA who told somebody who told me, to a bunch of, to community members reaching out to him saying, don't approve this, don't approve this. Initial charter approvals are then, they go before the State Board of Education, and the State Board of Education can veto his approval. And last year, they vetoed the charter approval of a school called Royal Charter School. This year, they vetoed 3 of his recommended approvals. The SBOE does like to hear from community members. So that's not to say that you shouldn't reach out to the commissioner, and you certainly should reach out to SBOE. I'm just kind of passing along what I heard. I don't think it should necessarily stop you from reaching out if that's what you want to do. Okay, so I was talking to Representative Howard and her chief of staff about how we can best help them do their jobs and not overburden them. So, and I know, as I said, having been on Senator Watson's staff, that when we get emails from our community and from our constituents, we respond to all of the emails. And so if you know, for example, that Representative Howard has taken a position in the past that you agree with, and there's another bill filed this session that is the same as the position she took on this bill before, you can write to her and say, thank you for your support of this issue in the past, and we urge you to support this again. And you can also say, no need to respond to this email if you don't want to burden their staff. If you do want to hear back from them, then don't say that. But the other thing that they said was that if several groups take a position on an issue or on a bill, that as they said, the more logos on a letter or communication, the better. And so I've seen several letters that have been signed by, for example, TASB, TASA, Raise Your Hand Texas, Pastors for, I forget what the name of the group, yeah, IDRA, so all these different organizations that support a particular position. It's much more powerful to see that they're all together on a particular issue than for these organizations to send a letter individually. It's sort of like I mentioned a while ago, when you look at who testified in favor of or in opposition to a bill, when you see this, this collection of people supporting a bill or people opposing a bill, it's much more powerful. So I don't know if this will necessarily lend itself to ACPTA. I don't know if you have communications with PTAs in other parts of the state or with other organizations, but that's just something to consider.
Yeah, and so I'm going to add on to that. We do at the ACPTA, because we're an organization, we work closely with Just Fund It and Raise Your Hand Texas, League of Women Voters. There's a number of organizations that we're working with. But as individuals, I just want to emphasize again, this doesn't mean that as individuals, we shouldn't continue to make our voices heard. as an individual. I do know that from talking to our representatives, if they hear from 10 parents about one issue, they're going to put a staff member on it and try to figure out what this issue is. 10 parents. I actually got that from Joaquin Castro. I was there in March and got a chance to meet him in Washington, D.C., and he said the same 10 parents, so even at a national level. So as an organization, we have a lot of clout and we have a lot of opportunities to join together. But as an individual, if we had not 10, but 100 or 1,000 parents leaving messages, we can change everything. And I saw that in action during the last legislative session. They kept trying to like sneak little things in. And even when they weren't trying to sneak them in, when we accused them of sneaking them in and got parents all riled up, their phones rang off the hook and they were like, Daphne, stop telling people I'm putting this in there because I promise you I'm not going to. Because it was so effective to have their phones ringing off the hook from parents. We're on the ground. It is our children who are affected by this. It is our children who are affected by the way teachers are treated in this state. So we have a voice, and every single one of us needs to make sure that we, in addition to these organizations, are doing our part, stepping up and making our voices heard to the people who are making these policies.
And I agree. And I think, you know, the results of the last midterm election are because of that. And, you know, the efforts of Texas Educators Vote, you know, they turned over 12 seats in the House. And so elections do matter, and your voices do matter. And so when they see that, you know, hundreds of parents or dozens of parents are weighing in on a particular issue, they know that you're engaged and that you vote. And so that's why it's important. And I would say also that when you do send an email, I know this takes time, but if you can relay a particular story of why this bill affects you or why you have a position on this bill, maybe it's because of your child, because of your parent, because of your, you know, your brother or your sister or your spouse or whomever, you know, that goes a long way as well. I know that when I was on staff, those really did mean a lot, and it made you stop and think, versus you're seeing 100 emails that are a form email.
And
that you tend to just kind of gloss over after you've read the 20th one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I will say right now, everybody who has any spare time in their resource bandwidth, our teachers need us to stand up for them because they are working around the clock to take care of our children. So they want to hear from teachers. Teachers are impacted by all of the decisions that are made by TEA and by our state legislators. And they need us to stand up and speak for them because they are very busy right now taking care of our children.
So I was going to share with you what came out on Thursday from the Texas Tribune and the quorum report. The House is not going to vote on its rules until they come into session and they elect the speaker. But they also report, the Tribune reported that the Lieutenant Governor has had a meeting with members of the Senate, and that these details were, quote, leaked. I see Debbie Clark nodding her head. So a lot of people on this call, you know, are familiar with this. That on January 12th, which is the opening day, they're going to limit the number of people who can be on the floor and in the gallery. They're going to test everyone on January 13th. Then on the week of January 18th, which is the following week, the Senate will take the week off. The week of January 25th, they will start up again, and that the Senate Finance Committee, which is the committee that writes the budget, will begin that week, the week of the 25th. The rest of January and February, they will meet beginning late Tuesday and on Wednesday on the floor of the Senate. The third week of February, other committees besides finance will begin meeting on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So, and it says the Friday after rules are adopted, committees will be announced. So I don't know when the rules are going to be adopted. And look for this. So, you know, there used to be what was called the 2/3 rule, where the Senate rules say that bills have to be taken in order. And, but to suspend the rules, 2/3 of the Senate can suspend the rules. And so that's how it was done in the past. And if you wanted to get your bill heard on the floor of the Senate, you had to get 2/3 of the Senate to vote to bring your bill, quote, out of order. When there were fewer Republicans in the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor changed the rules to 3/5 so that the Republicans could control. This session, there's going to be one fewer Republican than last session. So it's possible that the rule will be changed to just do away with that what was formerly the 2/3 rule and is now the 3/5 rule. So be on the lookout for that. Then also that the Lieutenant Governor said that those who testify in person will be required to sign up online 3 days in advance and to test 24 hours in advance. And those people will receive a QR code to show at the Capitol to gain entrance. So there will be no big lobby days. There'll be fewer bills this session. So it's going to be a while before we know who's appointed to committees. And the reason that's important is that in order to, you know, get a bill passed, it has to get through the committee, right? So you have to focus on the members of that committee, and that's where your alliances begin to become important. So if you have, you know, a senator from Dallas and you have the Dallas PTA that you have a relationship with, you know, you got to coordinate with the Dallas PTA to contact their legislator who's on that committee and so forth. So, so the focus has to be on the members of the committee that's going to hear that bill. So we're not going to know for a while who's going to be on these committees. So it's going to be a slow start because of COVID. So here we go. Look for, as I said earlier, the bills that support or relate to our priorities. And because we don't know who's going to be on the committees, it's not that important that I get it done like this month, because I think hopefully I'll have this posted by January. And then what I did last session is I sent these weekly Friday emails to people who signed up for them, just reporting on what the committees had heard, what committees were going to meet, some other issues. And so if you want to be on that email list, email me, or and if you already are on the list, we'll be sending an email out to you asking if you want to remain on the list. So
can I throw out there, Edna, that we're actually going to use Edna's information. We get together, there's a group that gets together on Sunday nights. If any of you would like to be part of that group, let me know. We take the information from the week, decide what is the most actionable and we have the most information about, and then we send it out as a template and it goes out through our ACPTA channels that parents can pick up, or teachers or community members can pick up, either use the template or, as Edna pointed out, add their own story to the template. It also tends to include background information. And so I just want to let you guys know that we are going to be working really closely with Edna. And so we hope that you'll see that collaboration, because the more we're aligned, the better chance we have of making a difference.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, ACPTA, for all that you do and for your advocacy and your involvement.
Yeah, it's definitely, Austin has a lot of very engaged parents. Okay, so does anybody have any questions?
Well, okay, Maureen, I was going to say, someone put something in the chat about, can we contest a charter that isn't used for its purpose?
Say that again. Debbie?
Nadia wrote in the chat, can we contest a charter that isn't used for the purpose it was obtained?
I don't think there is that opportunity. But I do think this though, if you know of a charter that is not fulfilling what it indicated in its charter application, that's something that you should share with the commissioner and with your legislator, because you know, if there's going to be a bill, and there have been several bills filed already on charters. Vicki Goodwin has a bill that's, I haven't read it in great detail, but from what I have read, it is supportive of our priority. But they need to know, they need to hear these stories, and not stories. They need to know what is actually going on out there. That if
Okay, I have to call you back.
so.
Right.
I think it's important. There's no way to legally, Debbie, contest it or to do anything about it other than to advocate for a change in the law.
And then my questions relate to, do you think we're going to have to make sure, are we going to have to spend a lot of time making sure HB3 funding stays at the same level? Are they going to try to cut that, you think?
Yeah, we need to make sure it stays at the same level, that the state's share doesn't decline. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit not tricky, but we're gonna have to look at the details, that the federal funds that we're getting for COVID relief aren't somehow counted in the state's share, which is now 45%. So we're gonna have to be on the lookout for that, because when the COVID federal funding goes away, we don't wanna automatically see that the state share has gone down to pre-HB3 levels.
And Edna, what is I mean, my understanding is the state still hasn't adequately shared the CARES funding that they received for education. Is that true, or has that been remedied?
Well, I've heard that that the funding the state has received has not been fully distributed.
Yeah.
So
that's what I've heard too. And that to me seems like a really big issue. As a fiscal conservative, it really bothers me that we pay so much in taxes for our education system, and then our state just lifts what they need to balance their budget, and they do it every year. I mean, every year the money that we give to recapture, it is not balanced and redistributed. There are millions or billions that are left off of that. And I throw out millions or billions. I cannot remember off the top of my head what the number is, but it's an appalling amount of money that we taxpayers need to hold our state accountable for.
Maureen, let me ask just one more question real quick. Do you think, because the budget is tight, that is there going to be more time spent on policy changes that don't require money? That was something Deborah and I talked about.
yes, I think that and this has been true even when we're not in a budget crisis, the bills with fiscal notes often don't pass because they have a fiscal note. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, that's going to be especially true this session.
Have you seen that with the 95 bills that have been filed?
Have I seen that with what?
The 95 bills that have been filed?
Oh, well, so there are several bills that have a fiscal impact. And for example, I know we need more counselors. There's some bills that require that counselors, the ratio be one counselor to 250 students. And right now it's something like, one counselor to 400 students or 500 students, I forget. And that's a good bill, but it's going to cost money because you're going to have to hire more counselors. So it's that kind of, or that every campus have a full-time nurse. Yes, I think every campus would love to have a full-time nurse. that costs money. So it's those kinds of bills that cost money that are probably, and if they're not funded, that's the thing about unfunded mandates, right? So we say, yes, we would love to have more counselors, appropriate the money that school districts need to hire a counselor for every 250 kids. So we're all for it as long as you give us the funding to do it. And we're all for it, but don't make us, we would have to choose. If a district has to, a bill like that passed, but we're not provided the funding, then we have to look at everything that we're funding and decide, do we want pre-K for 3-year-olds? Do we want to continue that? Do we want pre-K for 4-year-olds that we're not legally required to provide for free? Do we, do we want SEL? Do we, it's, so you have to look at all of your priorities and see what do we have to give up in order to fund this mandate that the legislature just passed.
Edna, is there an organization that keeps a financial tab of the unfunded mandates that come out of our Texas legislature?
I don't know if somebody actually keeps tabs, but that's a great idea. I know that TASA, either TASA or TASB in the past, has actually published a list of all the unfunded mandates that have been passed. But as far as it would be a school district, it'd have to be school district by school district that provides the numbers for, so for example, if this 1 counselor for 250 students passed, you have to base the impact, the fiscal impact, on how many students does this district have and how many more counselors do we have to hire versus this other school district. That, so it's kind of unruly. It could be done, but you have to depend on each school district to, or maybe not the school district. There may be an organization like a TASA or TASB that has each district's enrollment figures, and then you have to know, okay, how many counselors do you have now? Because some may have a smaller ratio than others.
They do, and in fact, I saw those ratios by school broken down someplace when I was looking at our own counselor situation. It sounds to me like a research graduate project or something. It's hard to imagine anyone in our district having the time to do that, but it does seem like it would give us a lot more teeth if we could tell people how much we lose. These unfunded mandates are pretty odious. It's pretty onerous burden that our districts carry because our elected representatives don't have the courage to put their money where their mouth is. And I mean, in some cases, it's hard to even get them to put their mouth where their mouth is, right? Like, so the idea of this second step, but we absolutely have to hold them accountable. That is what they are there to do, is to serve us, not the other way around.
I think it's, you raise a good point, and I think what I'm gonna talk to TASA and TASB about this is that as school districts do calculate the fiscal impact of a particular bill, that they send it to TASA or TASB so that they can keep a running tab. But here's the other thing. If a bill is not going to get a hearing, we don't do the fiscal impact calculation because there's hundreds and thousands of bills. So until a bill actually gets a hearing, we don't, or if we think it might get a hearing, one of the things we've done in the past is, as bills are filed, I would send them to the person in the district who has expertise in that particular subject matter and have them give me their comments on it. And if there's possibly going to be a fiscal impact, to tell me what the fiscal impact would be. And then I share that with our delegation. And if it gets set for a hearing, we send written testimony or testify on that particular issue. But until we know what the rules are going to be for this particular session. I'm not burdening our staff with having to do that yet.
I understand that. What is the appetite? And I'm asking questions. Y'all feel free to chime in. What is the appetite for raising revenue?
You know, several legislators are looking at other revenue sources, and you know, Nicole Connolly, when she was here and when she was on that the Public School Finance Commission, she served on the Revenue Committee, and she spent a lot of time looking at possible new revenue sources and looking at current exemptions that may no longer make sense. And she presented them to, well, she tried to present them to the commission. They are in an appendix to the commission's final report. And so I know when I talked to Senator Eckhart's chief of staff, he said she's looking at alternate revenue sources. I sent him Nicole's list, and I sent him Nicole's email address and phone number, and they did have a meeting. I have also shared Nicole's list with Representative Howard, who's going to be on the Appropriations Committee. So, you know, it's there. You know, Nicole did a phenomenal job of looking at this and of developing that list. So I don't know if legislators are going to have an appetite for, quote, imposing new taxes or eliminating certain exemptions. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. I'm very curious about that. We invited Representative Israel to our school last year, or it's a blur, maybe it was the year before. And I asked her this question about revenue, and off the top of her head, she listed 5 things, just rattled them off and said, the money's there, these are exemptions. She was talking about exemptions that didn't apply or applied to, you know, clearly a special group has carved themselves out an exemption. And she rattled off 5, and that didn't include medical marijuana or you know, recreational marijuana. It didn't include some big number items. It included things that were kind of common sense. I was kind of surprised. I don't know if Claudia remembers that. I think she was at the same meeting, but it was startling to me that they were just out there. These things are out there. She knew about them. But it's a matter, it really is a matter of will. And so if we parents say, time for you to find the will, sir, maybe we can push.
Yeah.
Lori?
So Daphne, I want to be mindful of time and what we have left. And I also wanted to add that we did want this group to engage in maybe how we frame up our next Make It Matter Monday action letter. You know, and I didn't share this with you this morning, but one of the ideas was coming out of this from these participants on, you know, for all of you who are attending this meeting, what did you hear today that you feel we need to prioritize in our next Make It Matter action letter? And so before I start that, I'm getting a poll together that I can share on Zoom. But Edna, do you mind if you can just, I don't have access to your screens, can you just kind of bullet point what those priorities were so that I can, and I'm hoping it's around 10 or 15 so that people can choose. And I know it's big broad buckets or big broad buckets.
So they're on our website. And one of the things you may want to do, because this is actually one of the methods we used here at AISD before we went to the board for their approval, is that the executive leadership team went through all the priorities and they picked their top 5. And that's how they came up with the sort of the broader 5 priorities. And then those that were left over, we put in the appendix. So, you know, you may want to have your members look at our priorities. If you go to our website, go to district and then Board of Trustees, And then under Board of Trustees, you'll see the legislative priorities. Did you find them?
You know, of course, when you're looking for something, it never fails. That tech is way behind you. So.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link, Laurie.
Okay, actually, I've got it right here. Yeah, if you could post the link, and I'm going to do a copy and paste. Whoops.
Maureen already did it.
Oh, you're the best. Okay.
So.
Good job.
You know, and that may be. We talked about this earlier, Daphne, about whether you want to break up into different. What did you call them? Breakout rooms. Is that your members who are more interested in one particular or two priorities versus other members who are more interested in other priorities, that may be how you want to break them out. So
yeah, at some point, so Edna's referring to, I had asked if we wanted to do breakout rooms. And in an interest of time, we probably won't today, but it is one of my challenges is there are a lot of big issues and a lot of people who are here for their one issue or their two issue, and I want to honor all of those. And so it really has been a challenge trying to make space for all of the things that parents and community members care about. And not just because they aren't a priority for kind of the big picture of what we're pushing, it doesn't mean that all of these little things aren't. And I said little things, and that's offensive because for people who care about these issues, they're all big things. But I'm trying to figure out how to make space for that. So just letting you know, probably not in this meeting, but in the future, I think it would be helpful to, have meetings where maybe we talk about everything and then break off into small groups to discuss in more detail some of the priorities. But for this meeting, if y'all, I did post the 5 priorities. If you can look and just shout out or put it in the chat, just so that we have some overall sense of where people are.
But also look at the appendix, because so for example, the appendix has the 5 charter school priorities. They're not in the top 5, but they're still a priority. So be sure and look at the appendix as well. And feel free to reach out to me. I would also say that, you have friends and relatives in other communities, and you might encourage them to do the same thing, because once the committees are appointed, then things have to go pretty quickly. So it would be great to have, and so for example, HB3 has a new weight for dyslexia. So parents with students who have dyslexia, maybe they have benefited from the extra resources that have been put into school districts for dyslexic students, is have that little story around that. Stories matter and personal experiences matter to legislators. So it would be great to start maybe focusing and collecting and recollecting how legislation in HB3 has benefited your student. So anyway, just
Edna, do you think, hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you think they're going to allow video testimony this session? I know the in-person's going to be, like you said, 3 days in advance and get tested. Will they allow something like a remote?
I don't think so, Marianne. Think about it. Here in AISD, at one board meeting, we had 139 testifiers, and that's just in Austin.
Right.
And this was when we were doing my video, and we're still doing my video. Can you imagine the whole state?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a burden for people throughout the state of Texas to travel to Austin to testify. But if they're able to do it by video, absolutely they would do it, and they would be there for days. So right. I don't see them doing that.
Yeah, and I know there's gonna be people likely vaccinated before the session. Like I'll probably be probably, I'm guessing by January, I'll have, so I don't know if they'll make exceptions to all the testing, but that's just something that came to mind. I was also going to mention it was interesting when you said the State Board of Education can veto what the commissioner recommends for charter schools. And our state board, I know Austin split into State Board Education District 5 and 10. And the one kind of central south going to San Antonio, I think that's District 5. She's going to be one of our speakers at Make It Matter Mondays. So it'd be interesting to see how she says, if there's any way we can work with them to help, kind of address the charter issue when it comes up.
Well, so one of the things in Vicki Goodwin's bill, I believe, I have to double check, is to give SBOE authority to veto expansions and not just new charter applications. So that would be, I think, a good thing.
Well, I think it's interesting. You said the commissioner doesn't want to hear from community members, and he's not an elected official, whereas the state board is. So maybe that's why they listen or want to listen to the community members. And I know Gina has a bill, Gina Hinojosa has a bill for the commissioner to be an elected position.
Right. Yeah, she does. So,
yeah.
Not sure that would change. I mean, we elected the governor. We elected, right. I like the idea of decoupling it because it does feel like it's become a political arm instead of an educational arm.
Yes.
But
well, just like they said, he's not responsive. He doesn't want to hear from a bunch of community members, where I believe if he were elected, that might change, not just in this particular one, but.
Yeah, I agree. And it would be nice to decouple them. It would be nice to have an education person who's focused on education, not politics.
Wow. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I want to be mindful of the time. Lori is going to put up a poll. I think she's working on it right now. And we would like everybody to kind of check into the poll before you leave. We still have a few more minutes. Does anybody else have any more questions? Hi, Marianne.
Hi, I'm not driving. I have just advice from Edna. We're trying to, so I guess the Texas Tribune doesn't have independent articles anymore. We're just trying to figure out what's a good way to, amplify our voices, op-eds, letters to the editor. Are there certain periodicals you think are read more or way more that you would recommend?
Well, let me think about that. Op-eds, does the Tribune accept any guest?
Not anymore.
Guests?
Yeah, apparently not anymore. They were, and now, so then I'm like, well, if they have their staff writers, do we want to, get to know them or, have a relationship or meeting with them or something like that?
I think we do anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, if there's a particular, story behind it, you might, reach out to news organizations, be it TV or the Statesman or the Chronicle, where they write a story. I think, I know that when my time is limited in the morning when I'm reading the paper and trying to get to work, is I read the stories. I don't necessarily read the op-eds. So if you can get someone to write a story.
Yeah, I thought of that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you know anyone that writes good stories.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Before you all go, I want to just thank Edna for what you're doing here and for the sort of comprehensive review. I'm taking any opportunity I can.
I didn't know we had trustees on the call.
To drink from the
I
fire.
would have been more polite.
Well, I learned a great deal, and it's, and I love how civically engaged. So ACPTA doing its thing pulls you out to do your thing, which means I got to sneak in and listen and learn. So thank you to ASPTA and of course to Edna.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to call me. And yeah, I mean, it's so essential that it's not just the school district. It's I think people get tired of the school district, the superintendent, the board members going to the legislature. They want to hear from their voters. I mean, yes, we're voters as well, but they really care about the parents and the community at large. And so anything we can do to support you, we will do. And that's kind of how the website has developed, and then developing the list of the boards that support our priorities, and developing one-pagers so that you're armed with the information, parents, that you need to go out there and tell the story.
That's huge. I'm going to give a little shout out. That was Kevin Foster. If you guys weren't aware, Kevin Foster is our new District 3, right, Kevin?
Yeah, District 3.
All right, congratulations, sir. Welcome to the board. And I want to tell my a little story. I was able to go down to the Capitol last year, and it was amazing because I was popping in on offices. I wrote up all these treatises. I have like my little pieces of paper I'd take in there and tell them where I stood. It did not take long before I would just be in the hallway and a representative would come up and say, I know you're a public education parent. And I always call myself a public education parent. They don't need to know which district or what city I live in, but they would come up to me and it's like, I can't tell you guys how amazing it feels to have an elected representative, a senator or state representatives come up to you and say, what do you think of this? And that is like the holy grail of advocacy. It happened amazingly quickly for me. It was like going to Las Vegas and hitting the jackpot, and it kind of hooked me in. I wanted to keep doing it. But I do just want to let you guys know we do matter. We do make a difference. And it is up to us to try to save this thing. So, and I say this education system in the state of Texas is not okay, y'all. We're not okay. Our kids are not okay. Our teachers are not okay. Our districts are not okay. It's not okay for us to keep going the way we've been going. That's why I'm here, right? Our teachers are not okay. So thank you all for joining. For some reason, I'm running this. I'm running this as a host, and I'm not technically savvy. So if anybody out there watching videos, I apologize if you're seeing like somebody scratching their ear while somebody else is talking. Lori, did you have a comment?
I do. Just also coming out of yesterday's advocacy group, we want to make sure to remind people that it's early voting this week for the remaining Austin board runoff elections or runoff persons. So that's the at-large position with Leticia Caballero and Noelita Lugo, as well as District 5, which is Lynn Boswell and and great, because I was like, and why I see her picture, Jennifer Littlefield. So thank you for sharing that. And that was on our agenda, as well as a personal ask that you guys share our Facebook link in this video to through your own personal social media channels and emails and kind of spheres of influence is what I've grabbed from Austin ISD. If you share that within your own sphere of influence, the easier and faster we are to get everyone on the same page, the better position we'll be in February, kind of approaching Rally Day. And then also, if you haven't participated in the poll, please let us know. I'm so excited. This really helps let you get involved in our process here at ACPTA. And I feel really good about charting our path when I know that our attendees have been involved in the process. So thank you. And thanks for giving me that space, Daphne.
Yes, you're welcome. Lori, where did you put that poll?
I think because you're a host, you don't see it, but everyone else did.
I want to vote.
I know. I also felt the same way. So I was like, why am I not seeing it?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. In the interest of time,
you.
I'm going to turn off the video and the Facebook Live. Edna, as always, it's a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank
you
you.
for everything you do. And I loved one of the message was teachers didn't even know you existed. So teachers out there, we love you. We're fighting for you.
Well, that was me, Edna, and I'm that's just me. I don't know if other teachers knew, but I can tell you that from just me being a part of ACPTA now and learning about advocacy, I think there's a lot of veteran teachers who don't understand the whole process. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
And let me know, Tanya, if there's anything I can do to share information that like apparently you didn't have. But yeah, it's important during the session. I also do intergovernmental work on the city, on the local level. I write policies, and I'm the elections administrator. So I do other things as well as this. So.
Wow, total badass. Oh,
A little
did I say that in public? Yes,
Yeah.
I just did.
That's okay. That's a compliment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, love you guys. Tthank you so much, Edna. I appreciate
Bye.
all that you're doing. Y'all take care.
All right. Bye.